Greece's centre-right New Democracy Party, led by Antonis Samaras, has edged its way to victory over Syriza, the radical left party led by Alexis Tsipras, in an election result that has eased fears of a sudden Greek exit from the euro. Well, Gideon Rachman, our chief foreign affairs columnist, joins me now. Gideon, this is clearly the result that EU leaders were craving, but do you think that this is a pivotal moment when you look at the future of the single currency and the Eurozone crisis itself?
No, I don't think it is. I think it would have been a pivotal moment, oddly, if the opposition had won, if the people who wanted to reject the bailout had won, because that would have forced a crisis immediately. What this does is it means that Greece is unlikely to be forced out of the euro, and therefore you're not going to get an immediate crisis. But it doesn't resolve the underlying problem, which is essentially that Greek-style austerity and politics and the sort of downward spiral of debt and bailouts has now spread to other, more systemically important countries, bigger countries, Spain, and with the fear that it will eventually reach Italy as well. And if those countries can't borrow in the markets and need bailing out, and we've already had to bail out the Spanish banking system, then the euro crisis will actually intensify, not ease off.
Now, we'll return to Spain in a moment, but just on Greece, can Mr. Samaras, do you think, form a broad coalition and deliver the stable government that Greece so clearly needs?
Well, I think those are two different things. I think he can form a broad coalition in the immediate term. I think it's likely that he will go into government with PASOK, the kind of rump of the old Socialist Party, which now are down to only about 12.9%. But with them and then another left-wing party, he should be able to get a working majority. But I think he knows that unless he can revive the economy and give Greeks some sort of long-term perspective as to how their country is going to get out of this, then he's always vulnerable to further radicalisation of politics. And just tossing up the votes in this election, something like over 50% of Greeks voted, about 55% of Greeks voted for either far left or far right parties.
A striking figure. Now, Mr. Tsipras, of course, rejected huge parts of the bailout. Mr. Samaras doesn't reject it in quite the same way, but he still wants to renegotiate some measures. Does he have any leverage there, do you think? The Germans have clearly said that this is non-negotiable.
I think he has a little bit of leverage. I think that there is a realization in Berlin and Brussels that the way that the bailout package is being structured just isn't working for Greece. They're in a kind of downward spiral. What I think the Germans will be reluctant to do is to throw even more money at Greece, because that will be very unpopular at home, and also they're conscious that Spain and Italy are knocking on the door. And they will be very reluctant to say that Greece can ease off on the kind of structural reforms, which I think everybody recognises are necessary to kind of create the conditions for entrepreneurship. Where there might be some wiggle room is to say to the Greeks, well, look, we'll lengthen the terms of payback. We may not write off yet more debt, but we may say, okay, you can pay back over a really very long period, and thus ease the pressure on the Greek budget.
Now, the markets did rally briefly on the back of this news, this election result, but have since fallen back somewhat. Do you think that as traders turn their attention away from Greece now to rising Spanish bond yields, which are now at levels considered unsustainable, that really the Greek problem was only a small part of the problem, and actually this is a much broader issue that isn't going to go away, this Eurozone crisis?
Sure, I think that in retrospect, the most significant event of the last week in the Eurozone crisis may not even be the Greek elections. It was probably the bailout for the Spanish banks, which took place the previous weekend and which failed to really lower Spanish bond yields and made it clear that, you know, this 100 billion they were throwing at the Spanish banks might not be enough to save the country, and therefore we're looking at much bigger sums, and that really is worrying for people.
Gideon, thank you very much indeed for that. Now you can get plenty more analysis of the Greek election result. That's at ft.com/Greece.